They called it a love that defied convention, a story of passion between a drama teacher and her precocious student. Brigitte and Emmanuel Macron. France's power couple. She was 24 years his senior, elegant, composed, and unapologetically devoted. He, a prodigy with ambition burning in his eyes. The world watched, puzzled and enchanted, as they rose, arm in arm, through the ranks of power. But love, as the public saw it, was only the veil. Behind the poise and poetics of their union lay secrets buried beneath decades of silence, fragments of a crime hidden in plain sight. And it began not with romance, but with disappearance. In 1993, in the quiet provincial town of Amiens, a young student named Julien Ferrand vanished. He was 14, gifted, reserved, and one of Brigitte's most promising pupils at La Providence High School. Teachers dismissed his absence as a runaway case. The police, under pressure, called off the investigation within weeks. His parents were devastated, but with no body, no note, and no sign of foul play, the town moved on. Everyone except one person, Julien's younger sister, Camille. She was only 9 when he vanished, but she remembered the odd way her brother had spoken about Madame Trogneus, Brigitte's maiden name. He'd confided in Camille weeks before his disappearance, whispering that he'd discovered something dark during rehearsals for the school play. She hadn't understood what he meant. Until 30 years later. It was the summer of 2024 when Camille Ferrand, now a respected journalist working under an alias, received an unmarked envelope. Inside, a photo of her brother standing next to a young Emmanuel Macron, their faces pale, eyes hollow, in the shadowy backstage of the school theatre. On the back, scrawled in shaky pen, they knew. She made us promise silence. A second note enclosed gave a time, a date, and a GPS location in the forests outside Amiens. Driven by grief, rage, and long-dormant suspicion, Camille went alone. There, buried beneath moss and roots, she unearthed a rusted tin box. Inside, a VHS tape, a faded script annotated in red ink, and a small notebook labeled Stage Truths. She watched the tape in stunned silence. The grainy footage showed Brigitte instructing a group of young boys during a rehearsal. But what was chilling wasn't what she said, it was the moments in between. Off-script glances. Frantic gestures. Subtle signs of coercion. In the margins of the script were notations that seemed to document more than blocking and stage direction, they recorded fear. Names. Dates. He touched me, was written next to Emmanuel's name. She said if I speak, I disappear, beside Julien's. The notebook only confirmed what Camille feared. It wasn't just about inappropriate relationships. It was a grooming ring. And Brigitte was orchestrating it. Camille didn't go to the press. Not yet. She knew the machinery of power was far more lethal than anyone realized. Emmanuel was president. Brigitte, the nation's first lady. And now, possibly a criminal mastermind. Camille reached out to an old source in the intelligence community, a man who owed her a favor from an exposé she buried to save his daughter. He confirmed the unthinkable. There had been sealed investigations into La Providence in the mid-90s, redacted files that connected Brigitte to several missing students and a network of elite patrons, judges, businessmen, clergy. And every time someone got close, they were either promoted, paid, or silenced. The next day, Camille's apartment was broken into. Her laptop was smashed, files stolen, and her cat poisoned. That was the warning. She packed a small bag and went off-grid. But not before uploading everything, every document, every recording, to a private server, programmed to release the files automatically if she didn't enter a daily code. She wasn't suicidal. She wanted justice. The twist came during a state banquet. Emmanuel Macron stood beneath the golden chandeliers of the Élysée Palace, giving a rousing speech about transparency and reform. Brigitte smiled at his side, radiant in Dior. But across the room, a journalist stood, trembling, holding a microphone. "Mr. President," she said, "what do you have to say about your wife's involvement in the 1993 disappearance of Julien Ferrand?" The room froze. Emmanuel's smile faded. Cameras clicked. Brigitte's hand dropped from his. He looked at her, not with confusion, but with something darker. Recognition. 2 hours later, Brigitte was found unconscious in her private suite. Overdose. Or so the official story claimed. The nation was thrown into turmoil. The press speculated suicide, stress, betrayal. But Camille, watching from an undisclosed location, knew better. She hacked into hospital records. There was no toxicology report. No CPR logs. The signature releasing her to a private clinic was forged. Brigitte hadn't overdosed. She'd vanished. The story should have ended there. A powerful woman disappears under mysterious circumstances, her crimes buried beneath privilege and state secrets. But justice, real justice, is never linear. It waits. It builds. A week later, Camille received a message on her burner phone. A video. Brigitte, in a dimly lit room, hair disheveled, speaking directly to camera. If you're watching this, then they didn't kill me. They need me alive for now. But what we started at La Providence was never about lust, it was about control. About molding future kings. Emmanuel wasn't a victim. He was the chosen one. And I was just the hand that shaped him. She paused, her voice trembling. But I kept one thing. One boy survived. Julien. He's alive. Camille dropped the phone. The next morning, Camille's fail-safe server was breached. The files wiped. Her source in intelligence was found dead in a river outside Lyon. The authorities ruled it an accident. The nation mourned a president's wife. But Camille had seen the truth. Julien was alive. Brigitte was a prisoner, or an accomplice in hiding. And the president of France was not who he claimed to be. This was no longer just a story of forbidden love. It was a conspiracy stretching decades. And justice had only just begun to stir. The final message Camille received that night came from an anonymous email. No text. Just an attachment. A photo. Of Julien. Standing in front of the Elysee Palace. Smiling. The photo haunted Camille. Julien Ferrand, her long-lost brother, smiling in front of the Elysee Palace, the very heart of the machine that had consumed him. 30 years vanished, no grave, no trace, and now this. He looked different. Older, of course, but not just in age. His eyes. They held no warmth. No recognition. Just that eerie calm worn by men who've seen too much, and buried more. Camille sat in a safe house 3 hours south of Paris, a weathered farmhouse lent to her by the last person she trusted, her former editor, now quietly retired after being blacklisted by the very networks they once served. Rain battered the windows. The wind howled like a warning. She played the message again. Julien's image, captured from a distance, zoomed in just enough to identify him, but not enough to confirm where, or when, it had been taken. She did what she always did in crisis. She wrote. Not for the public, yet, but for clarity, for survival. For the record. The notes she scrawled filled 3 legal pads, timelines intersecting, names circled, redacted files decoded, links drawn between elite prep schools, foreign banking accounts, and sudden deaths. At the center of it all, Emmanuel Macron, France's golden boy with the plastic smile, and Brigitte, the puppeteer turned phantom. But now Julien had returned. And that changed everything. 3 days later, Camille received a burner call. A voice she hadn't heard in 3 decades. Camille. She dropped her pen. Her throat tightened. Julien. Silence. A long breath. You have to stop digging. Tears welled in her eyes. Where have you been? What did they do to you? He didn't answer that. You don't understand what this is. It's bigger than her. Bigger than him. They let me live because I agreed to become one of them. What does that mean? Another pause. I work for the Directorate. French intelligence. The same agency that had suppressed her leads. She felt her stomach drop. Julien's voice was almost mechanical now. Brigitte didn't orchestrate the ring. She was initiated into it. So was he. The school, the theater, it was all a recruitment hub. They picked students with potential. Or secrets. Both, ideally. And you? I had both. And I didn't keep my mouth shut. So they made me disappear. Camille's hands trembled. So why contact me now? Because they know about the files. About your server. Someone wants you dead. But someone else doesn't. She whispered, "Who?" Julien gave her a name. One she hadn't expected. Brigitte. She escaped the clinic. She's hiding in Marseille. She wants to meet you. But why? She's dying. That night, Camille boarded a southbound train under a false name. Wigs, forged ID, burner phones, paranoia wasn't paranoia anymore. At 2:17 a.m., she slipped through the alleyways of Marseille's old port, heart pounding. The address Julien gave her led to an abandoned hotel. 3rd floor. Room 305. Brigitte opened the door herself. The woman before her was no longer the poised first lady. Gone was the glamour, the polished charm. Brigitte looked like a ghost. Gaunt. Eyes sunken. She coughed into a blooded tissue. "I don't have long," she rasped, beckoning Camille inside. Camille hesitated, then followed. The room was bare. A single chair, a mattress, scattered notebooks. On the wall, maps. Names. Red yarn connecting photographs. "Everything they've told you," Brigitte said, "is half the truth. Emmanuel and I, we weren't lovers. That was a narrative they built. I was assigned to groom him. He was the chosen one. The bloodline had to be protected." Camille blinked. "What bloodline?" Brigitte smiled bitterly. "The Merovingians." It sounded insane. A conspiracy theory. A dead dynasty. But Brigitte pressed on. "They believe Emmanuel descends from a sacred line. A bloodline tied to the Church, the Templars, even Christ himself. They've manipulated history, education, media, all to position him. But Julien, he was never supposed to know. When he found my ledger, I begged them to spare him. They didn't. So I faked his death. Hid him. Trained him. Gave him a second identity. And they brought him back when I became a liability." Camille staggered back. "You saved him?" Brigitte nodded slowly. "He works for them now. But he still remembers who he is. That's why he warned you." Camille wanted to scream. This was too twisted. A royal bloodline. A secret order. Pedophilia masked as politics. And yet, in Brigitte's eyes, she saw truth. Or madness. Or both. Brigitte reached under the mattress and pulled out a thick envelope. "Here. These are the original ledgers. Names. Transactions. A list of those who attended the plays, who chose their victims. Presidents. CEOs. Priests. It's all there." Camille took the envelope, her fingers shaking. "There's one more name you need to see," Brigitte whispered. Camille unfolded the first page. Her eyes froze. Her father's name. Tears spilled down her cheeks. "No. He died before Julien disappeared." "No," Brigitte whispered. "He was one of the first. He brought you to that school. He knew what it was. Julien was going to expose him. That's why he had to go." Camille collapsed into the chair, sobbing, the weight of generational betrayal crushing her. Brigitte touched her shoulder, weak. "You can release it all. Bring the house down. But they'll come for you. And for Julien. And they never fail twice." A moment passed. Then the window shattered. Gunfire. Brigitte fell back, clutching her side, blood pouring through her fingers. Camille dove behind the mattress, heart pounding. From the hallway, boots thundered. Brigitte gasped, her last breath ragged. "He tried to protect you. Julien. He never stopped." The door burst open. Camille raised her hands. And there, standing among the shadows, was Julien. He held a silenced pistol. His expression unreadable. Behind him stood a man Camille had never seen before. Salt and pepper hair. A tailored suit. Calm eyes full of judgment. He nodded at Julien. And Julien aimed the gun. At Camille. Camille stared down the barrel of her brother's gun. The room was heavy with smoke and silence. Brigitte's lifeless body slumped against the wall, her hand still clutching the edge of the mattress like she had one more secret to give. The man behind Julien, impeccably dressed, expressionless, was clearly the one in charge. Camille didn't know his name, but she recognized his type. The kind who never dirtied their hands, only gave the nod when it was time to clean house. Julien didn't blink. His arms were steady, not a tremble in his stance. Camille forced a breath. Is this who you are now? A machine? Julien's eyes flickered. Something cracked. She was your sister, the man said coldly. But now she's a liability. Julien's grip faltered, barely. Enough for Camille to speak. Tell me one thing, Julien. When they killed father, did they make you watch? Or did you pull the trigger yourself? His face twitched. You think they spared you? You think they made you? They took everything from you. They turned you into their weapon. Julien's eyes shifted. He was involved. Camille took a slow step forward. Then why protect the people who used him like bait? Why finish their work? The man spoke up again, voice like a serpent. Because Julien knows what you don't. That ledger doesn't expose a conspiracy. It would burn civilization to the ground. You think the world's ready to learn their kings and pastors, their presidents and poets, all drink from the same poisoned well? Camille didn't flinch. Let it burn. The man raised his hand. But Julien turned the gun on him and pulled the trigger. Silenced thunder. A single breathless pop. The man dropped without a sound, a crimson bloom soaking through his pristine shirt. Camille screamed, falling to her knees, chest heaving. Julien stood frozen. Arms still out. The silence deafening. I'm done, he muttered. No more names. No more lies. But it wasn't over. Julien dropped the pistol and reached into the inside of his coat. Camille flinched, but he wasn't drawing a weapon. He pulled out a flash drive. Sleek. Black. Unmarked. This has everything, he said. A digital copy of the ledger. Their operations. The farms in Tunisia, the retreats in Switzerland, the offshore banks. Everything Brigitte knew. Everything I learned inside. Camille took it, hands trembling. Why now? Because justice doesn't wait for the right time. And neither do ghosts. Sirens echoed in the distance. How they found them, Camille didn't know. Maybe Brigitte tipped them off before she died. Maybe the man on the floor had backup. Or maybe fate had simply run out of patience. Julien turned to the window. You need to go. They won't stop. But they won't silence this either. Camille moved toward him. Come with me. He shook his head. I won't outrun this. But you might. She wanted to scream. To fight. But there was no time. He helped her climb down the fire escape just as headlights flooded the alley below. Voices shouted in French. Heavy boots hit pavement. But Camille ran, ducking into the night with the flash drive pressed against her heart. The next 48 hours were a blur. Code words. Dead drops. Safe tunnels through forgotten Parisian catacombs. Camille reached an encrypted server in Spain, then transmitted the contents to 3 trusted journalists across 3 continents. She embedded her own story among the documents, then disappeared. 1 week later, the world began to unravel. The first leak hit the Vatican. The second crippled a major bank in Luxembourg. The third? A list of names, politicians, diplomats, actors, and journalists, who had all visited the same elite summer school in Amiens, year after year, under the pretense of arts education. The French government called it disinformation. Interpol launched an investigation. But the people weren't listening to officials anymore. They were listening to Camille. She emerged from hiding 2 months later in Lisbon. The world had changed. Or so it seemed. She gave a televised interview under oath. She named the man Julien killed. She showed the ledgers, the photos, the timelines. And then she did something that terrified even her. She named Emmanuel Macron. The documents tied him not just to the school, but to private offshore funding tied to deceased miners' estates. Accounts scrubbed from French registries. Testimonies from 2 surviving victims, hidden for years, now surfaced. Protests erupted. The Elysée was placed under lockdown. And on a cold October morning, Emmanuel Macron held a press conference. Calm. Collected. His wife, Brigitte, noticeably absent. My fellow citizens, he began, these accusations are not just lies. They are weapons. wielded by those who want to dismantle the Republic. I will not resign. I will not bow. But something was off. His left hand trembled. A week later, he vanished. The official story? A retreat for security reasons. But Camille received a package the next day. No return address. Inside was a photograph. Julien, standing on a beach in Cyprus, gazing out at the water. Behind him, blurred but unmistakable, was Emmanuel Macron. In handcuffs. No explanation. No message. Just a second flash drive. When she opened it, it contained surveillance footage. A hidden chamber beneath the Elysee. Children's drawings on the walls. A blood-stained chair. A shadow moves across the frame. And then, a voice. Familiar. Ragged. Brigitte. I told you the bloodline had to be protected. But even kings bleed. And then the screen goes black. No credits. No ending. Just a blinking cursor. Waiting. The truth was out. But justice?